The city's tallest towers. Good evening, I'm Chuck Scarborough.
And I'm Sue Simmons. We begin for you tonight with the latest developments, and there are several in the World Trade Center bombing. At a briefing just minutes ago, the FBI revealed additional security cameras may be buried underneath the rubble from Friday's furious blast. Cameras that may have recorded the bombers. A reward of $200,000 is now posted as cleanup and construction crews struggle to put the city's tallest skyscrapers back in business. And 5 separate and sad services today as grief-stricken families bury the loved ones they lost in Friday's lunchtime nightmare. Our extended coverage begins now with Pablo Guzman, live at Police Plaza. Pablo?
Sue, actually at this particular briefing, it's the second of the daily briefings that the NYPD, FBI, and alcohol, tobacco, and firearms people, along with folks from other agencies like EMS, are having for the media. But the story, really, of the investigation is not much progress. They have not yet been able to get to the heart of the epicenter because of all the structural damage, the danger of collapse, the danger that would the walls coming in on people would pose to the other investigators, and that's really slowing things down. We're talking about perhaps another 7 days before they're able to get to the heart of that explosion. And so everything else that you may have read about, they shot down some stories here like there's a partial license plate number. They said, hey, that doesn't exist. They have not been able to get to that kind of material. They did confirm, however, that there may be other videotapes.
We have 2 tapes in our possession right now covering the B3 and the B6 area of the parking garage, covering the dates from Wednesday at 8 a.m. through Saturday at 8 a.m., with the exception of Thursday 8 a.m. to Friday 8 a.m. That tape is now missing.
On day 5 of the aftermath of the World Trade Center explosion, some parts of the police work had settled into a kind of routine. Investigators continued to make their way gingerly towards the center of the explosion, examining each piece of rubble as they went. Meanwhile, the city announced a sizable reward for information leading to the arrest and conviction of those responsible.
We are today introducing legislation which would authorize a $100,000 reward for information leading to the arrest and conviction of the person or persons responsible for Friday's explosion at the World Trade Center.
Officials continue to be optimistic about reconstructing the cause of the explosion, which, coupled with other leads, will go a long way towards revealing who did this and why. But they caution that breaks in the case will come slowly and deliberately.
But, you know, we might be making too much of this videotape thing. It's going to be a great asset if we have videotape of pertinent areas, but it's almost totally unlikely that it's going to show us anything more, at best, than a license plate.
Lieutenant Walter Boza, the commanding officer of the New York City Police Department's bomb squad, was here and had a chart and showed how it was that the explosion just spread out in the public garage area of the Vista Hotel. And the significance of that is it conveyed a sense of the size of this. 200 by 200 feet, 7 stories up and down in either direction. And from that location is my colleague Kevin Rosen, who's reporting live from the World Trade Center. Kevin?
Well, Pablo, of course, in an ideal world, some piece of evidence would jump out at investigators and lead them directly to a suspect, but most times it doesn't happen that way, and that's why the slow process of piecing through the evidence continues. And part of that process includes going through every single vehicle that was parked below the World Trade Center in the underground garage. And for the first time today, investigators got a chance to look at that evidence in the light of day. It is a long, tedious process for investigators from the city's bomb squad, the FBI, and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. One by one, they will go over each vehicle parked below World Trade, piling up boxes of evidence ranging from dust particles to actual pieces of the car. The first car out was a 2-door gray Nissan. In case you couldn't tell, it was covered with soot and totaled by any insurance standards. Bob Berzillo came by when he heard the cars were coming out. He brought a camera to try to get a picture of his Isuzu Rodeo, which he parked in the garage Friday morning.
I don't normally drive in. I was going to go away for the weekend. I drove in to go away, and I parked the car, and I haven't seen it since.
It took investigators about an hour and a half just to go over this one car. This whole process could take several days because there's about 200 cars in the parking garage. The investigation was hampered by structure problems after the first car was removed.
Just the structure itself is not secure yet.
So you're having to shore that up?
Shore that up first, and then we'll resume bringing the cars out.
And part of the daily routine here is bomb scares. The Port Authority says they have had 100 since Friday. Construction workers had to evacuate the Vista Hotel as they were trying to shore up the building.
It seems there was something about this one that made everyone feel that we should be evacuated, and now we're going back in because seems to be all clear.
And back to the investigation, about 10 vehicles have been pulled out of the garage from the ramp that is located directly behind me. 10 vehicles so far. Those vehicles are standing by here until the Port Authority finds some facility that can hold them while this investigation goes on. The evidence they pulled out of those cars will go to a lab where officials can take a much closer look at it. Now, we can speculate all we want as to leads in this case, but to the people who go through the evidence here, their ears are closed to all that speculation, and they continue, as they say, to go through this evidence with a fine-tooth comb. Back to you in the studio.
Thank you, Kevin. And officials today announced plans for a small and symbolic memorial to the victims to be located at the Twin Towers.
Well, investigators hope to recover every piece of the area devastated by the massive blast, and not only will they carefully reconstruct those lower levels, they will certainly look and comb through it for specific evidence. News 4's John Miller is here to tell us they will search critically for important evidence. John?
Well, that's all going to take a long time. Yesterday, because of another partial collapse, investigators suffered a setback they thought might cost them 48 hours. Today, they got a break. Today, as the first cars to be pulled out of the wreckage were being hauled up, FBI bomb technicians had found what they'd been looking for since Friday. News 4 has learned that a team of bomb techs from Washington just before noon located the blast point, or what they call the seat of the explosion. While FBI agents thought it would be a parking space somewhere on the B2 level, 2 stories below ground, the seat of the blast tells them that whatever contained this bomb, likely a car, was parked on the ramp leading to the B2 level. Today's discovery by investigators is a lucky break for them. It could have been buried underneath the rubble. Now they believe they have found the spot they've been looking for. Even so, they still have plenty of work. Not days, not weeks, they say months of piecing this debris back together.
The latest investigative developments are we are interviewing more and more of the registered owners of the cars that were in the building at the time of the blast, and so far nothing dramatic has come out of that that would be relevant to the investigation.
Now, there was a report that the name of a known terrorist came up in checking those parking stubs. The FBI says that's not so. They say they have just started feeding those names into a computer. The development of finding the blast point, the point of origin, is intriguing. A car or a van couldn't be left on one of those ramps for long without attracting attention or even being towed away. That means the bombers must have dropped off that car and left in a hurry just minutes before the explosion. Chuck?
So any unusual frenzy of activity, a quick getaway that was seen shortly before the blast would be quite relevant as far as the FBI is concerned if any witnesses happen to notice that.
Well, I would say, and you know, there's always something telling about the Q&A. When I asked if a terrorist name had surfaced, they said, that's not true. And I said, tell me about the car that sped away, the van that hit its ceiling because it was going so fast over the speed bump, and they said no comment.
Right.
So, I mean, that may be telling.
Okay. Thanks, John.
Well, the bomb blast claimed 6 lives, and today families bid their tearful goodbyes to 4 of the victims. The funeral for 35-year-old Monica Smith stands in stark contrast to what would have been a beautiful event only weeks from now. Smith, a secretary, was 6 months pregnant. And another family mourned today in Valley Stream. Roger Stern has their story.
80-year-old Anna DiGiovanni lost her youngest son, John, one of at least 5 people caught in the blast, killed by a bomb that was placed for reasons his loved ones can only guess at. His mother cried out, "My poor baby," he was blown apart.
What a way to die, Mama. What a way.
Unlike the other known victims of this explosion, the 45-year-old DiGiovanni didn't work at the World Trade Center, didn't work for the Port Authority. He was a salesman. He sold dental supplies, and he had parked at the World Trade Center for a sales call in Lower Manhattan.
When they had called me, we were shocked. We couldn't believe it. And it kept on going through our minds. I said, it can't be John. You know, he was just so full of life.
It's like losing a brother.
And in such a senseless way.
It's too hard to comprehend. It just is. It just is.
DiGiovanni is survived by his mother, his brother, and the girlfriend he had planned to marry. They may have taken some small comfort from the homily in which they were told, people all over the country have been praying for you.
The only thing that can overcome a senseless act of violence and a hatred is the power of love, and realizing that God's love is still with us through this.
Workers are trying to repair the hole left under the World Trade Center, but there may be no way to fill the hole left in so many lives. Roger Stern, News 4 Valley Stream.
One family has good news to report tonight. 55-year-old King McGee, an employee on the 14th floor of the Trade Center, was feared dead, but today he showed up for work, unaware he was on the missing list.
Well, a lot of people would like to get back to their offices at the Twin Towers, but now comes word it's going to take much longer than originally thought. Mary Seville is live.
To come out peacefully with all the people.
Wednesday, March 3rd, but David Koresh breaks his bargain, and the bloody confrontation continues. We'll have